Good morning. So, at the risk of giving a book report rather than a meditation, I've chosen to talk about a book I reread this month while isolating with mild COVID. It was a novel that I first read as a young woman, an undergraduate English major at MSU. The novel is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, considered by some to be her greatest and most visionary novel. The class was 20th century British literature, and Virginia Woolf was, of course, the only woman writer we read. But this was pre-feminism as we now know it, so this did not at the time seem unusual, and I did not complain about it to my professor. I hadn't started doing that yet. Mrs. Dalloway is the portrait of a single day in a British woman's life as she plans an extravagant party, the first one after years of no parties because of the war. The setting is London in the aftermath of World War I, with the signs of both damage and recovery everywhere, in the streets, in homes, in shops, and inside the minds of the characters. The novel was and still is considered to be groundbreaking for a number of reasons: that it begins and ends over the course of a single day, that it had no chapters or headings, that it focuses on an ordinary woman's experience, and that it is propelled forward by its use of stream of consciousness as well as spoken dialogue. There is constant conversation between the characters, but the conversations exist on a separate plane from the thoughts inside everyone's heads. Kind of like two streams running parallel to each other, one above ground, one underground. What is said and what is not said. What is shared and what is not shared. What is real and what is imagined. What is happening and what will never happen. It is a novel of brilliant insight about the human condition. It also quietly reveals an undercurrent of mental and physical fatigue and damage for a group of citizens after a terrible event. We know that Virginia Woolf herself struggled with depression, and this led her to create a character like Clarissa Dalloway, who is struggling to feel like she and her family and her friends and her city can recover and move on. It makes one think of the British quotation that we see on posters, T-shirts, and dish towels, especially in light of Queen Elizabeth's passing: keep calm and carry on. The novel's famous first line is, Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. This sentence establishes Clarissa as someone determined to have her way, to arrange her party, to do what needs to be done. Clarissa is determined. She is a determined person, determined to foster connections and kinship and to share the beauty of her home, to decorate it with flowers, to share food, to celebrate. Yet her thoughts are troubled, filled with doubts, regrets, sorrows, and old grudges. She is fretful as she plans her party. She is high functioning, but she is on the edge of an abyss about what has happened to her world, what has been lost, and what other losses might be coming. The novel wrestles with a great question. What does it mean, and what does it take to celebrate life when previously unimaginable tragedy has occurred? I chose to share this personal adventure in reading with you today, partly to recommend the process of rediscovering something that you read when you were young, something that is perhaps more meaningful and appropriate and useful now. This can be eye-opening about what shaped you, and it can make you grateful that you are older and wiser. But Clarissa's struggle also seems surprisingly pertinent, though her story takes place almost exactly 100 years ago. A woman and a city and a culture are rebuilding after a time when normalcy was shattered. As a reader, I wanted to share this morning the miracle that a century ago, Virginia Woolf wrote a day-in-the-life novel in such a revolutionary, modern way. Her intellectual courage, her honesty, her awareness of what it costs to live fully in our emotions, even the difficult ones, are powerful and relevant today in our city, in our country, in our world. Through a novel like Mrs. Dalloway, we can examine our inner lives, we can claim our fragile relationships and our sense of purpose, our determination to carry on, our interdependence, our need to stay useful, helpful, compassionate, and honest. So buy the flowers. Gather in hope and celebration. Keep calm and carry on. Happy autumn reading, C3.